Today we're going to get a little crafty. Have you ever done bookbinding? Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, my name is Rob, this is my mom Karen. We are your hosts at Books Banter and Beyond, and we got a fun one today. I know you and I are crafty, here at home we're crafty, almost anybody I think I've ever talked to is crafty, so apparently crafting is a thing.
Yeah.
Who knew? And in a day of things like Etsy, where people are selling their crafts, why not add something that can not only be beautiful, but also be helpful to old stories? So I know you yourself, you know what bookbinding is, so you're familiar. But for those who aren't, bookbinding really preserves the book and kind of gives it a new life by recovering said book. So first we're going to talk a little about it. We're going to talk about what it means and why it's important to actually share the skill with maybe the future generation. So first off, I mean, you know me, I love my digital media, my ebooks, my audiobooks. All of that is convenient, but I would be lying if I said that a nice physical book doesn't have a unique value. I mean, look at our shelves. We're a little obsessed, right? I mean, I guess we're biased, but hey.
That's why we're doing a show called Books Banter, and Beyond.
Right. So handcrafted books not only showcase the skill of craftsmanship, but ensure, as I mentioned, the longevity of said book. So basically, there's not too much to it. You're basically rebinding, recovering. And as I was telling you off screen just a second ago, sometimes those covers look better than the actual cover. No offense to the authors, your covers are great, but sometimes that little addition of color and of, physical, because you actually can use materials.
Right.
It kind of looks like an old fashioned,
right.
They call it tomes back then. When you open the tome,
Right.
It's kind of a fancy word for book.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I think for the topic today is why you want to share this form. If you go back in time, ancient manuscripts, all the way up to now, reflect cultural heritage and innovation. Not only is sharing the knowledge important, but keeping the knowledge. Unfortunately, places like the Library at Alexandria, one of the oldest libraries, was burned down. And while some books were taken out, a lot of literature from that area, I believe it was over in the Middle East, is lost forever. Reasons for burning down, obviously back then, was kind of more conquering. I think other countries came in, they said, nope, this isn't ours, we're going to get rid of it, we're going to build our own thing. And that's kind of what happened. Unfortunately, the library got caught in the crossfire. There it goes. Recently, obviously, with the fires going on, that's also a fear as well. Obviously, today's libraries are built a little bit better, but still there's always the concern that if a natural disaster does happen, you may lose cultural significance, right? So sharing the knowledge about bookbinding, going online, you can find various people on YouTube, you can find people on places like Etsy. And it's, once you learn how to do it, it's kind of a cool skill to have, right? So I know I've kind of done my part, so I'll pass it to you. What are some thoughts you have on?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's another way to really enjoy your books. It's a great way to make them yours in addition to theirs, who wrote it, right? And I think it's important because it preserves the book for a longer amount of time. I mean, I was thinking as we were getting ready to do the show, I have a whole slew of historical books at the top. You can't actually see it over there.
Okay.
That Papa had gotten when he was growing up. Now we're talking in I want to say the 50s is when he got these books, and he passed them down to me, and they said, I don't even know if you know this, Rob, they're sitting on the bookshelves, and it's all the wars and the presidents and all these really cool things. And the front of them are very old, and it would be something that I might want to bookbind, right? To preserve it for a long, because I think, you do digital, right? And I like to touch my books. So do you think that doing these book bindings are going to, contribute to the I'm just going to say preservation. I can't say the word of literature. Do you think that really, does that maintain it, or the fact that it's sitting digitally somewhere else? Do you think one has more?
I mean, I think as far as digital goes, it's always going to be important, because I think if we've learned anything from physical stuff, nature tends to break it down. And unfortunately, the one thing that's easiest to break down is paper. And what are books made out of? Mostly
Right.
it's paper. So I think digitally wise, as far as preservation goes, digital is always going to be important. However,
Right.
if you have a set of books like those from the 50s or prior, um, it's it's twofold. It's important to keep it together for the sake of keeping it together, because obviously,
Right.
I mean, that book, my guess is it's not going to be reprinted. So once it is destroyed, it's gone. You don't have it. So that's part one, is keep
Right.
it alive because it's probably the last copy, but also the generational gap of, okay, hey, let's say you do want to teach somebody about something like the war from a firsthand view. The idea of giving somebody that book from that era is going
Right.
to be more helpful than a reprint that may lose some of the information.
Right, because it maintains that bookbinding maintains the historical aspect of it, right? And the
Correct.
artistic
Yeah.
part of it, traditions of it. There are a lot of do-it-yourself now out there. I mean, if you go, all you have to do is go
I'm
on
glad you
social
brought that
media,
up. Yeah.
right? You can go to social media and you see them, all sped up. But basically, they're showing you how they take these books, and then they show you how to put the inside of the book, the paper. It seals it, and
Yeah.
your own. It almost makes it your book. It's like your book. It's not just the author's book. It is now your personal copy of that.
It's your version. I mean,
Right,
nobody else is going to have it
right.
because you're the one who made,
And it is
maybe.
popular. It is becoming more popular. I don't think that there's a single social media platform that I haven't seen in the past, let's say 6 months, that every so often something rolls down my feed of somebody rebinding a book or making it them, making bookmarks that go with the book binding, right? Where they're really just creating these beautiful pieces. Now, I guess the question I would ask you, does it take away from the historical aspect? So if I have a book over there that's from the 40s, a bunch of books, and I go and I start bookbinding it, do I take away, and I don't know the answer to this, does it take away from where it came from, or you only should do bookbinding on those books it only can enhance it rather than take away from the historical?
I mean, that's actually a fair point. I am one of natural, so I prefer, and I know, I've watched plenty of shows where they discuss how, the price of them, how expensive they are. I don't know if you remember Antiques Roadshow, but a lot of times people will bring on a book from the 30s, and not just the price per se, but the physicality. And if you touch it, you lose the meaning for it. So there are some books, maybe historical references to maybe like a government or maybe to stuff like that, that I wouldn't ever, ever, ever say to touch. If, however, you have a personal book, maybe something that somebody wrote for you, or maybe a book that is just for your general bubble, then that's fine. And I think you also take into account, if you're going to do it, then you're going to keep it forever, and you're not going to plan on selling it or giving it, because when you do that, you really can't give it to somebody. It kind of loses the purpose.
Right. And I think
So
there's another thing that, I mean, I think you guys have done a couple of them where it's not really bookbinding per se, but it's creating a scene from the book that sits on your bookshelf. That, so let's say, and I believe Krista's done a couple of these already, where you take like Lord of the Rings, and literally it's a scene from the Lord of the Rings with the book binding on. I mean, it's really cool. So it's taking
oh,
book
yeah, yeah,
binding to the
okay.
next level, sorta, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, especially like you said, in a day where people like to make
Right.
things. If it's a model, if it's a puzzle you put together,
Hmm.
that I think is almost as helpful. But yeah, I mean, the point you brought up, it's definitely reeling in my brain now. Do you want to do that? Because somebody might say it could be destruction of a very classic book by putting something on top. So for me,
Or it maybe you don't do them to the classics. Maybe you do them to the mass produced books where you can get, you go to Amazon, there are a gazillion of the same thing,
sure,
maybe,
yeah.
and you do it yourself, and you give it that something special that nobody else has, and maybe that's the intermediary of that. Maybe, it's not going with the classic books, which you totally like. I don't think I would do that to these books. I feel like I should get up there and bring it, but I'm not going to. But I don't think I would do it to those books. But maybe to like a more contemporary book. I don't, and maybe that defeats the whole purpose. I don't know.
Well, it kind of brings up the next point of the sustainability too, right? Of
Right.
like if you're going to do it to a book, why are you doing it to the book? And how are you going to? But I like the idea of doing it to, let's say you're into like, what's his name? The guy who did all the Sum of All Fear stuff and all the Tom Clancy stuff. So let's say you have an entire row of him and you're really into that. Why not decorate your books?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it wouldn't hurt and it doesn't lose the value. And it's not to say his books aren't important.
Right,
It's
but it's
just to
not a
say
classic.
that.
Yeah, Tom Clancy's books are not classics per se.
Right, and there's probably a billion out there. So if you want an
Right.
original copy, you can find one. But I think it comes the sustainability, and we talk about sustainability a lot. It comes
Right.
into that of not only are you keeping the book alive, but you're probably helping with the footprint of buying more.
Right.
Because my guess would be is that if you have your Tom Clancy's and you do cover and you bookbind, you're probably never going to necessarily have to get another copy because if you bind it well enough, you've preserved it, right? So
Right.
you're inadvertently saving not only money and time, but also
The book itself. And the thing, there's all sorts of DIYs that are coming out now. The bookmarks that are actually purses. They have links, like chain link on it or a shoulder,
oh,
and
correct, yeah,
you link it inside the book to have a bookmark, which could be a create your own bookmark. It could be customizable, that kind of thing for the book. I think I love do it yourself. I know you love do it yourself. I know the whole upcycling and recycling and doing things like that. I think this gives people an opportunity to show their creativity.
yes,
Um,
definitely,
and to share that creativity with their families, because ultimately it becomes your legacy, right? If you go and do this with all these books that are already classics or not classics, they're going to be handed down to your family, and those books are not going to be given away because they're so unique, right? We need to do one.
oh, definitely, we should. But before we go, I know we had the one question at the
Yeah,
bottom that really good was,
yeah,
is this going to continue, and how can we make sure it does? And I think we've probably given people a good 10 ways to do so.
right,
But I think generally speaking, art in general is important. Like books are number one, art for me is number two. Painting, sculpture, you can't redo that. You have classic authors who have long gone,
right,
Van Gogh, Picasso, all those guys. So you need to preserve that too, right? So anytime that you can mix art and reading together, that's just a double whammy. So I think it is important to get people of the future to at the least maybe 5% of them keep this going a little bit. You just need a few people to do it and to just kind of keep it going. But I think just like a good sculpture or a good piece of art, if you can beautify or just protect a book, why not do so? So I think it's a very important idea. And even prior to this, I knew I'd seen it, but I didn't realize until I did the research how far down it goes, and I'm shocked at how deep this actually is for an art project.
right.
So
Exactly. And so if you're interested in maybe giving this a whirl and you want to, try it on a book that's gently used rather than on a brand new book, this is another great example. Go find a classic in the Next Chapter Bookstore.shop. They're all gently used, and maybe you'll find something that you really, really love, and maybe the cover needs to be, tweaked a
a
little
little
bit.
TLC,
Little TLC, little TLC. I love that. Um, as always, we love doing these shows. We hope you did too. Let us know what you think. Are you going to go out and do a book binding on one of your books? We'd love to see it. Send a picture in. We'd love to see it. Put it in the comments. All right, guys. We'll see you next time on the next episode of Books Banter and Beyond. Goodbye, everyone.